Bom dia, race fans. Welcome back to another edition of the legend that you are. This weekend we had the Formula 1 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix, and my god, what a banger of a race it was. It was so good, even my dad called it a great race. And for context, my dad has been watching F1 since the days of Niki Lauda. He does not drop a great race lightly. So let's go over everything that went down here at the Race Day Cafe. Also, all my OGs know the shirt had to come out. The Senna shirt reappears in this channel. Let's go! I'm sorry, I know there is way too much gimmickry around Ayrton Senna whenever we come to Sao Paulo, but he's my guy, okay? He was cool, okay? Maybe not in some ways, but in other ways. I don't know if a lot of you heard about this, but Valtteri Bottas went to join the Danish team at Sail GP. I'm by no means a Sail GP expert, although I do enjoy me a regatta every now and then. Vamos gallos, vamos Diego Botín. But seeing Bottas there is crazy, like, bro is just completing side quests at this point. And the big bombshell news, Charles Leclerc and Alexandra Saint-Malo are getting married. Bring out the flowers, pop the champagne. I'm usually not really invested in the drivers' love lives, to be honest, but I am excited to see what this wedding is gonna look like. Like, knowing how much effort Charles always puts into his image, like, for example, on his website, I know this wedding is gonna go hard. And another big news, Franco Colapinto extended his contract with Alpine until at least 2028. Let's go, man. Hispanic driver supremacy. Together, we will defeat the great evil of British bias. The only thing to highlight from free practice was Yuki Tsunoda crashing into the barriers, but honestly, it was kind of a mild crash as far as crashes go. So let's go to sprint qualifying. Right off the bat, love the gigantic Gabby banner. That's the spirit. In SQ1, Alonso ended up in the top 3 somehow, and we learned that Sainz can't pronounce the word execution correctly.
This is the worst execution, which
is adorable. And understandable, to be honest. In SQ2, Alonso was actually faster than Norris on the slow corners. If this is a dream, do not wake me. Both Ferraris were absolutely nowhere. Leclerc spins and brings out a very brief double yellow flag, and Lewis Hamilton goes out in SQ2 because he doesn't get to the line. Again. Once again, what the hell, Ferrari? And Q3 ends with Norris on pole, Alonso in 4th, and Verstappen only 6th. And then somehow Antonelli sneaks into 2nd place. Classic Mercedes strategy, appearing from absolutely nowhere. We get to the sprint where it's absolutely not raining. So much for the tropical storm or whatever. But it did rain overnight and the track is still drying up, which definitely won't be a problem during the race. Anyway, we start the race and Norris keeps his lead, while Piastri tries to overtake Antonelli and he gets so close that he almost gives me a heart attack. Bro really said, I'm in Brazil, if I don't go for a gap that exists, etc, etc. Meanwhile, Verstappen passes Leclerc and Alonso to get 4th place. And Lewis passes 3 people before we even get to turn 2. My goat. And further back, Liam Lawson tries to overtake Behrman, but he doesn't have enough room, so he makes contact with Ollie and makes him spin. And Antonelli starts to get within DRS of Norris right as they enable DRS. How convenient. Not like it matters though, because Oscar's starting to catch up to Kimi and he's on mediums as opposed to Kimi's softs. But of course, like everything that has to do with Oscar lately, it's an illusion. And on lap 7, Piastri goes a bit wide into turn 3, goes over the curb, picks up some water, and crashes into the barrier. But that wasn't all, because somehow Nico Hülkenberg and Franco Colapinto did the exact same move, drove over the same puddle of water, and ended up in the barriers right alongside Oscar. Literally, 3 cars went off in the exact same place. Fucking Interlagos, it's always something like this with you. Anyway, the race obviously gets red flagged after that, and during that pause, the Sauber mechanics somehow managed to fix Hülkenberg's car enough to send him back out on time. Massive respect to these folks, they are pulling miracles out here. Anyway, the race restarts with a rolling start, which is a choice. Norris is able to steer clear of Antonelli, Russell tries to pass Kimi but can't, and then Verstappen goes for Alonso and they have a beautiful battle. It's short, but still, I love seeing 2 F1 legends collide. After a few laps, not too much is happening except for a battle for 5th between Alonso, Leclerc, and Hamilton, in which Leclerc keeps trying to pass Alonso, but the GOAT is like, you thought. Although for some reason, they're telling Alonso to do lift and coast. Crazy work as always from Aston Martin. And for some reason, Pierre Gasly's become invested in this fight and turned into the 3rd commentator. That Ferrari needs to get past Alonso. And his engineer goes, I'll be sure to let him know. Diabolical. Anyway, back at the front, Kimi is within DRS of Lando, so he might actually win his first ever race at 19. But as we've seen, the spirits of Interlagos have already decided that Lando's gonna be unbeatable, so yeah, Lando wins the sprint, Kimi is second, and George is third, but not before Gabby Bortoleto crashes out in the very last lap. That was a terrifying crash, by the way, Jesus Christ. And his steering column broke. On the Senna S. Okay, I will stop now, but jeez. Before we get to the race, let's talk about my sprint superlatives. My sprint ace of the race was... Fifth place in that tractor is commendable enough. But my god, the defensive masterclass that Alonso put on today is a gift to my eyes. Yes, I know Leclerc passed him eventually, but Fernando still held him off for most of the race, which seemed impossible. And even had a little scrape with Verstappen too. Anyways, GOAT behavior. Fight me on this. My sprint disgrace of the race was the motherfucking puddle at the curb on Curva de Sol. What do you mean 3 drivers went off at the same place? Not least the man who needs every point he can get right now. Anyway, at this point I'm convinced that Piastri's been cursed by a demon or something, because what's happening to him is not normal. The start of qualifying was delayed by an accident during the Porsche Super Cup, but that's good because it gives Sauber some extra time as they scramble to fix Gabby's car in time. Even Mattia Binotto came down to help the mechanics. That's peak boss behavior, by the way. In Q1, both Antonelli and Behrman put in a banger of a lap, and the huge shocker of the session is that Max Verstappen can't make it past 16th place. When a 4-time world champion fighting for a title is not able to get out of Q1, you know you've made a stinker of a car. Also, Gabby was ultimately not able to get on the track, but it was still a hell of an effort from Sauber. We love a competent backmarker. Q2 was a bit more uneventful, except for Ollie and Kimi also setting a banger of a lap somehow, and Lewis Hamilton was somehow out in Q2 in his home race. And then in Q3, of course Lando Norris snatches pole again. This is no longer surprising. Oscar Piastri ends up in 4th, and then... wait, what's that? It's Kimi Antonelli with a steel chair! What the hell is going on with these rookies lately? They're as invested in getting Rookie of the Year as Piastri is in winning Grill the Grid. Okay, now let's talk about that race. Lights out and away we go, and the start is relatively uneventful until Gabriel Bortoleto crashes out of the race at the very end of the lap. So my man didn't even make 1 lap of his home Grand Prix. Somebody please call Anthony Hamilton, because this rookie might need an emotional support grid dad. We get a safety car where we learn that Lewis Hamilton actually ran straight into Colapinto on the straight and broke his front wing. So he was literally saved by the safety car, which gave him an easier pit stop. On the restart, Piastri sees a gap down the inside of Antonelli, and he immediately gets possessed again by the spirit of Ayrton Senna. So he goes for the gap that exists, but surprise surprise, he locks up and runs into Kimi, which starts a domino effect, and then Kimi hits Leclerc beside him, breaking his suspension and making the Ferrari DNF. Honestly, the shocking part is that Oscar made it okay out of this, so now he's right behind Lando. So task failed successfully, I guess. There's a VSC, and Max has a puncture, so he pits for mediums, which brings him right back to the bottom of the grid. Damn, if only he were a 4-time world champion with a reputation for doing extremely well on this exact track. Many such cases. The race restarts and Tsunoda gets a 10-second penalty for running into Lance Stroll, and Oscar gets handed a 10-second penalty as well for the incident on Kimi and Leclerc. So now we're finally starting to see the thing that will make any F1 race top tier. Different strategies. Piastri has a penalty to serve now, so he'll be trying to extend the mediums as much as possible and go for a 1-stop. Norris needs to pit at some point, but Max just said that the hard tires are bad, so that basically rules it out as an option for Norris. Max is also on mediums, but he's trying to get the most use out of them because he's trying to climb up the pack. Now that is beautiful. But what is also beautiful is that Max is now going into Super Max mode, and it literally only takes him 10 laps to get within contention of the podium. Again, this guy started from the pit lane. Max, you don't need to destroy everybody else's confidence like that, jeez. Also, Yuki Tsunoda gets another 10-second penalty for not serving the first 10-second penalty properly. Honestly, every time I think about how Max and Yuki are driving the same car, I lose a little bit of my sanity. On lap 35, Max decides to pit again because he's absolutely shredded his mediums making his way up, and Ferrari finally decide to put Lewis Hamilton out of his misery and pit him to retire the car, which means both Brazilian drivers are out of contention again. Man, people in Sao Paulo can have nothing. By the way, at this point, the midfield is absolutely popping. It seems like every 30 seconds there's an overtake around here, and half of them are Ollie Behrman somehow. We get to lap 52, and by some miracle of the Interlagos spirits, Verstappen is now leading the race. Damn, I never thought I would be happy to see Max Verstappen leading a race after, well, 2023 for starters. Eventually, everything resets and we're left with Norris leading the race, Verstappen trying to pass Antonelli for second, and Piastri trying to pass Russell for fourth. So quite literally, Mexico Part 2. So now's the part when there's a VSC out and we don't get to... Oh wait, no, there is no VSC. They are actually letting them race this one out. And ultimately, Piastri's still a little bit too far from Russell, so nothing doing there. But Max gets so close to Kimi, and yet the Italian shuts the door. So that means Lando Norris wins his second Grand Prix in a row, with Kimi Antonelli in second and Max Verstappen in third. And Lando extends his lead in the championship to 24 points. Hit it, Kimi.
Yeah, boy!
I honestly think that was the first time I heard anyone say "yeah boy" since like 2017. So that was the race. Now let's talk about my superlatives. My ace of the race was, sing it with me. You guys know that I'm not a huge Max Verstappen fan, but the more I watch him do these things, the more it makes me want to set off an orange smoke bomb at Zandvoort. Like, we suspected that a pit lane start might not hinder his race too much, but goddamn, a P3? That's diabolical. I think this was 100% a race for the history books for him, just like last year. Thank you, Max, for truly making F1 a pleasure to watch every weekend. My honorable mention for ace of the race is Kimi Antonelli. Maybe I will get hate for not highlighting Lando instead, but I'ma be so honest, I did not expect Kimi to do as well as he did today. Not only did he qualify amazingly and was able to recover after the incident with Piastri, he also managed to defend the Max Verstappen at the very end, in a weekend where also George Russell was visibly not as good. And I also like that Kimi kept Lando a little less comfortable in his lead than he was in Mexico. Like, yeah, Lando still won by a lot, but you could see that he was a little bit rattled by it in the post-race interviews. Kimi really said, "I'm joining the fight for Rookie of the Year," and honestly, good for him. This weekend's disgrace of the race is Oscar Piastri. I'm tired, boss. Listen, a 5th place is not that bad, considering everything, but it's definitely not the result he needs if he wants to stay in the race for the title. I will say I at least appreciate his racing driver mentality going for the gap that exists with Kimi Antonelli, but frankly there was no real way he was making that overtake cleanly. It's definitely not looking like he's gonna stay in this fight for much longer, which is just such a disappointment, honestly. With how good he was in the junior formulas, I was really hoping that he would be able to do the same thing in Formula 1. But yeah, maybe I just have to accept that Piastri's not actually goated with the sauce, you know? For my strategy masterclass of the day, I guess I'm gonna say V-Car. Part of their success is admittedly on the drivers though, because they qualified amazingly well, but they still managed to finish with some decent points, which is impressive considering how tight the midfield was, and they get to take home some points which they desperately need for the Constructors title. Not to mention the fact that Liam Lawson did a one-stop race, like, genuinely how? Great weekend for them overall, and I just hope neither of them gets demoted to Red Bull anytime soon. My underdog shoutout this week goes to Ollie Behrman. I mean, what can we even say about this kid anymore? Another amazing race for him, basically executed just by overtaking everyone and their mother, until he found himself in P6 with like 15 seconds to Piastri and 20 to Lawson, so he was chilling. Also, speaking of Liam Lawson, look at the sick overtake that Behrman did on him. Like, what the hell is even that? My dude's truly doing unreal things in that Haas, and I am here for it. My favorite team radio was GP Lambiase telling Max Verstappen that he was leading the race after having started from the pit lane, and Max just going, "Not bad. Yeah, just another Sunday for me." I feel like this man somehow has no concept of how insanely good he is, and I just love that. For the best moment of the weekend, I mean, I feel like the race was great enough already, but specifically I think the 2 battles at the end is what took it from good to great. And it also felt like we got some kind of closure from Mexico, which was nice. The worst moment of the weekend for me was Gabriel Bortoleto DNFing both times and also not even making quali. Like, genuinely, could he have had a worse weekend? It's just always so sad to see a driver not doing well in their home race, but especially when it's their first time ever. To be clear, I am not Brazilian, I have no allegiance to Brazil whatsoever, but I do have a heart, okay? Overall, I'm gonna rate this race a 5 out of 5 stars. What else can I say? Interlagos blessed us once again. At this point, I'm like, how much more proof does the FOM need that the classic tracks are fine, actually, and that maybe it's the cars and the driver standards that are ruining the sport, and not the fact that there isn't, like, a Six Flags beside the track or whatever? Lastly, let's look at my prediction bingo, where of course, nothing got added. However, I may or may not have been cooking with this one. Also, at this point, this one is genuinely haunting me. Like, how has Lando not gotten a Grand Slam yet? This is crazy. But what did you think of the Brazilian Grand Prix? Let me know in the comments below. And please remember to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy what I make. And as always, I will see you in the next Grand Prix, which is Las Vegas. Stay fueled and go watch a classic Senna race, maybe. I feel like rewatching Brazil 91 is the move right now.